Florida Gators reportedly have a tight ends coach, and we're going to tell you all about it and what UF fans should expect from the newest hire on Billy Napier's staff. Gator Online's Nick De La Torre reported today that Russ Callaway would be promoted from his role as an offensive assistant in 2022. Callaway has an impressive background. He won 2 national championships with Alabama as a defensive analyst. You want to know who he worked for when he was there at Bama? One defensive coordinator, Kirby Smart. Okay, let me tell you, it is really important that he worked for Nick Saban, right? First of all, he knows what Billy knows because Billy worked for Saban. So he's going to understand the processes that Billy has in place. He's going to understand his recruiting philosophy, his Army philosophy, everything that goes on in that building. He's already going to be familiar with, not only because he was already an analyst under Billy, but because Billy got it from Saban, which is exactly where Callaway also learned how to become a coach. He's familiar with Kirby Smart. This is huge, right? At this moment, Georgia is Florida's biggest adversary, their biggest rival. So understanding what makes Kirby work, how Kirby is in meetings, what Kirby's like on the recruiting trail, how Kirby attacks game preparation, what he does in the off season, what he prefers in the weight room. All of these things are so important to eventually overtaking what Kirby's doing at Georgia, right? This is a super smart move on Napier's part because it really is going to give some inside knowledge as to what's going on at one of our biggest rivals. I also think this is huge because of recruiting, right? He's familiar with what Kirby does, like we talked about. He's familiar with what Saban does. He knows what it takes to recruit for both of those staffs. He knows the things that they're selling, not only about their own program, but the things that they're selling about other programs when they go on recruiting trips. He's going to know what they point out as negatives about Florida. He's going to know what is really attractive about those Alabama and Georgia programs, which then will give him the ability to spin that for Florida. Something that Alabama is recruiting as a positive, he could take that, twist it, really, really help Florida out there. He worked as an offensive coordinator, a quarterbacks coach, and a wide receivers coach at Samford. So he's familiar with really multiple areas on the offensive side of the ball. And this guy was just sitting on our staff as an analyst. He also worked in the NFL. He worked for the Giants as an offensive assistant. From there, he went to LSU where he was an offensive analyst and then a senior assistant. This guy understands the SEC. But not only does he understand the Southeastern Conference as a whole, he worked for some of the giants in the SEC. If you work for Alabama and LSU, you get it, right? You understand why this is the conference of crazies. We do football differently in the SEC. It's better and bigger and harder than any other conference in college football. And honestly, if you haven't worked in it, you're going to be blown away once you work for a program inside that conference. He's not going to have any of that. There's not going to be the sticker shock there for them. There's not going to be the starstruck. He knows what it takes to grind it out at the very top. He knows what it takes to get a program to the top and then stay at the top, which is honestly the hardest part of being successful in the SEC. He also has that NFL experience with the Giants. That is something that recruits are looking at, right? Not only can you develop me in college, which he has shown that he has worked for Saban. He has worked for Kirby. He's worked for LSU. He's shown that he knows what it takes to develop talent at the college level, but then he also knows what NFL coaches are looking for because he worked in the NFL. And I think that that's going to be a huge sell on the recruiting trail, right? That experience in both of those areas is going to be huge. I also think that tight ends work really heavily with the O-line for blocking, wide receivers coaches for route running. These are all things that he already has experience with. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's coached wide receivers. So he is going to be able to really, really guide these tight ends with a wealth of knowledge that he brings to the table. And this hire isn't just about recruiting, though. It's not just about selling a guy that has worked at Alabama and has worked in the NFL. It's also about continuity. Napier knows how important this season is, the 2023 season. He knows what is on the line, and he knows what he needs to do to be successful. Napier knows the team finished under 500 2 years in a row. He knows the outlook for this season. Fans should not see this as settling at all. Napier is being thorough, and he got who he thinks is the best guy for this job, taking multiple things into account, taking the recruiting, taking the continuity, taking the scheme that's already in place. I know that there is confidence in the building that Callaway will be a good recruiter who brings relentless effort for the Gators. And we hear Billy Napier talk about relentless effort all the time. Do you want to know why Billy Napier has an army of off the field staff? Because he's going to call on them when it's necessary and bring them in to replace coaches who wind up getting promoted and end up in the NFL, which is exactly what happened this past season. And do you want to know who started that? Who set the trend of setting this army, having these guys waiting in the wings? That would be Nick Saban. The legendary Bama coach is known for having offensive and defensive coordinators on his staff so he can promote them when his guys end up moving on, getting promotions, going to bigger and better things. What are you guys' thoughts? Let's chat down in the comments and let's celebrate this because Billy got his guy. We're hearing great things on the wide receiver coach opening, and we expect that to be filled really soon as well. Make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any news by clicking right here. And make sure you don't miss our recruiting update from this weekend by clicking right here.